Welcome to My Tech Opinion, episode 25. My name is Daniel Olivares in Melbourne, filling in for Phil Edwards in this episode. And I'll be joined by our regular co-host, located in Perth, Shayne Johnston. Our feature topic this episode, we'll be looking into eSports. So let's get the show underway right now. Welcome to My Tech Opinion, episode 25. My Tech Opinion is brought to you by Aussie Tech Heads Web Hosting. For great hosting plans and support, visit athwebhosting.com.au. For the listeners and viewers joining us for the first time, My Tech Opinion is a program that has a deeper look at the feature topic each episode. And it won't always just be the two of us. When possible, we'll also have a guest to join us and lend their expertise and knowledge to help us unpack our feature topic. All that said, our feature topic in this episode will be looking into esports, and I'm apparently the expert in all that because I play games and I have attended an actual esport event. But I'll do my best to fill in you people that are not aware of what esports is, and I'll tell you what I've learned so far as well. But yes, so hopefully you'll be interested and want to find out more about what this whole esports thing is. You're probably wondering who is this guy? My name is Daniel Olivares. I do a show with the regular co-host of this show, Phil Edwards. Myself, Phil Edwards, and Andy Bloom, we do a tech radio show called Geeks Interrupted in Melbourne. So we do a radio show, live radio show on Monday nights, and then during the rest of the week, we produce a podcast of that show as well. And Phil, many reasons why he's not in this week. One, he is a lazy bum. Two is, unfortunately, his favorite team, the Hawks, lost yesterday from the Melbourne Demons. So there goes their chances of being in the AFL finals. And speaking of the finals, the other thing too is that he, like I mentioned, we do a radio show together. He does the VFL commentary, and this weekend is the preliminary finals of all the VFL teams. So it's Saturday and tomorrow. Saturday, at the time of this recording, he's busy covering that. So he's asked me to fill in. So that's where I am. And any big fans of My Tech Opinion, you might even remember me. I was interviewed as a special guest on podcasting a few episodes ago. Shayne, do you know what episode number that was, or any
not off the top of my head?
No.
Shouldn't be easy to find out. I know you because we did Jessica at episode 8. You would have been 8 or 12.
Yeah. So yes, so I am around. You can probably find me around as well. So anyway, Shayne, how have you been? I can tell by the background that the weather in Perth looks really good.
If it was a live shot, yeah. No, actually, the weather today is pretty good. It's nice and sunny and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But no, the first week I had this background up, the weather was actually cyclonic outside.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a complete opposite here in Melbourne. In Melbourne, it is top of 13 and raining at the moment. So I am in my warm house with my warm hoodie on, and that's about it. So yes.
So can you arrange for the temperature to kind of pick up another 10, 15 degrees within 2 weeks by the time I get there?
We'll see. I'll do my bit to contribute to global warming, and that will hopefully increase temperatures to that amount. Hopefully it may not be permanent either, but you know.
Just a week on
I can only do so much with my little Skoda Fabia driving around every day as well. It's more powerful than a Barina, that's for sure. But yes, those are the reasons why Phil, unfortunately, is here. And at this point of the episode, you're probably regretting that he's gone for this episode. Anyway, now, Shayne, we mentioned that we were going to be looking into eSports. But let's talk about other things. You're I'll give you the choice. Should we talk about ourselves more, or should we go to a listener's question?
The only exciting thing that's happened to me is since our last episode. No, the episode before, based on when this will be posted, we did an episode on Raspberry Pis, and I went and bought one.
Yes. So you YouTube viewers, or if you're watching the video version of this episode, I'm waving to you, but I'll let Shayne speak. He has got himself. Is it just a Raspberry Pi, or there's a particular name for the device?
It's the Model 3B Plus. So it's the latest and greatest, the one that's got it's got Wi-Fi, it's got HDMI, it's got 4 USB, it's got a gigabit Ethernet port. It's got the SD card. You can get them kind of pre-installed with the Raspberry kind of operating system.
Yep.
I went that way since I'm kind of new at it. So I'll be playing with that later today and over the weekend.
So what's the purpose of that then? So you mentioned is for network configuration or monitoring your network. What can you do with that?
What I'll be doing with it is connecting it, because with my router I can mirror any of the ports.
Yep.
So I'm mirroring the WAN port, going to whack that in there and load it with a particular software, which I haven't worked out what one I'm going to use yet, to just monitor traffic and all that kind of stuff, make sure that things aren't getting out or getting in that aren't supposed to be, and all that kind of stuff. It would have been handy when I had other people living here, like when the family was here and all that kind of stuff. I could sort of more accurately sort of say, it's the kids that are wasting all the bandwidth and all that kind of stuff. Now I can't blame them.
You can't blame it. It's like the realization, the truth comes out. It's like, it was me all along.
Yep.
Kind of like the scene of Planet of the Apes where he finds out it was Earth all along, but it's you with your networking usage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, poor analogies away, let's go into a poor segue to actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ruin the show here. Let's talk about me as well, what I've been up to this week. Sorry, I haven't been up to much at all. Anything tech-wise, not really. If anything, I've been configuring I do a bit of Twitch streaming, so that's playing video games and letting strangers watch you play games. And there's a program that most streamers use called OBS. I'll try to find the actual full name. I think it's like Open Broadcast Software. I'll go a jump with that. And if I am wrong, please don't email me. And I've been having issues with OBS because I've got to configure that the streaming part, it converts any video that I'm playing onto the stream, and then I have another process that records that. So I use my CPU for the processing of the stream and then the GPU to record it. It comes up with encoding overload errors. Here's the thing. Not bragging, it is somewhat of a decent PC. So I got a AMD Ryzen 5, and that should be quite sufficient enough. There's people use Ryzen 3 and they have no issues with streaming. So I think I should have a decent quality stream. And when it's saying encoding overloaded, the stream buffers, so it doesn't look good on my part, and it stuffs up my recording, so it makes me look even worse. So I was trying out different programs. So there's one's called XSplit. There's another one called Streamlabs OBS, which in the gaming world, Streamlabs is a service that helps you earn money and does special effects on your stream. They've bought because OBS is an open, it's open software. So they taken that and made their own version of it, and they both suck. So it's sort of, I'm stuck with OBS and trying to find out a way to sort of stop that encoding overload issue. So yeah, that's my sort of tech things. If you want to go entertainment, last night I saw The Predator, the new movie.
Is that anything to do with the other Predators that have been and gone?
Yes, they actually even mentioned about, we've been monitoring this alien that has landed in 1980. Well, when was the first Predator with good old Arnold Schwarzenegger released? Hopefully Google can give us a time. 1987. So 1987 and 1991, we've spotted this alien, obviously reference to the Predator 1 and 2. It's supposed to be canon, and technically kind of is, because very interesting fact, one of the actual actors in the original Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Shayne Black, he's the director of this movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Either way, the movie sucked. It's a so bad it's good sort of movie. It's definitely a very weird start. The action scenes and like if you like your B grade movies, you'll definitely enjoy this movie. But like
That's in the category of like Sharknado and all those.
yeah, I saw the Meg a few weeks ago as well. Meg is a better structured movie, but it's also a bit boring as well for what it is. It's kind of moments like okay, it get bored about it. Predator was a better sort of action schlock, silly movie, and there are definitely some funny moments there. So I enjoyed that part. But as a movie in general, it's like it's a bit crappy start and finish. But that's my opinion. You probably look at a trailer and you probably look at the reviews, and many of them are kind of on point of what I think about it as well. So yeah. Anyway, apart from that terrible segue I was trying to get into because we were talking about NAS and networks and wireless. Shayne, we got you got some feedback.
We do.
A question from a listener or viewer. You know.
Yeah, we don't get feedback that often because we're kind of still a new show, but it's always good to get feedback from people. And I'm just scrolling through the notes to try and find the feedback. Here we go. So, where does it say the guy's name? I haven't actually recorded or copied the guy's name across into the show notes, but he knows who he is after we read the actual email up, and I might actually be able to squeeze in the guy's name into the show notes while we're doing the editing. But anyway, he goes on to say, "Hi guys, love the podcast. Great listening to you both each week. I'm preparing for NBN fiber to the curb and looking at a modem options as the provider I'm planning to go with offers a crappy modem. Trying to determine is it worth going with the crappy modem or investing in a good Wi-Fi / router or even getting a good modem router combo. I have a typical household, double story, 13 plus devices connected via Wi-Fi, 2 kids on YouTube, PlayStation and Netflix." And then he goes on to ask us or maybe suggest that we could even do an episode about it. So we'll do our best to answer the question now. The technology that he's lining up for is the same technology that Phil usually uses or that Phil uses. So it's a shame he's not here to answer the question, but we'll give it a bash. Daniel, what do you reckon?
Indeed. Look, I'm going to talk about my personal experience with my setup. So any viewers of the YouTube version of the show can probably see, and I'll try and bend a bit. Just behind me, I had got a My Republic modem, and I'm a fiber to the node NBN customer. And above me, connected to that, is an Apple time capsule that I'm using as my Wi-Fi. So I guess to answer your question is whether you should get a all-in-one modem Wi-Fi or just accept the modem you get from your telco and get a combination with a standalone Wi-Fi router. I'd personally go the latter. I bought myself, and I'll see if I can get it on time. I got I think it's a pretty full-on Netgear device. I think it's like the Hawk. Or
sounds familiar.
Yeah. I bought myself a Netgear Nighthawk because I was so enthusiastic to get my NBN that I got that and set it up with my modem, with my NBN setup. And eventually, when I did get my modem that's supplied from my ISP, I found the speeds were better with the ISP's provided modem than with I think at the time it was a $400 modem, wireless modem router that I bought from Harvey Norman. And I'm putting that down probably just the configuration that the provider would have on that modem. In saying that, the Wi-Fi range on that $400 machine was way better than what I got from what the ISP supplied. So personally, my opinion is just look, hey, get the free modem or whatever, $100 or whatever you paid for your ISP provider, and use that modem, and look into a Wi-Fi setup that's best for your house. My parents are in a double-story house, and they have pretty much the same modem, a Netgear Nighthawk, and they need internet access downstairs, and the modem setup is upstairs, and it works quite well. But then maybe look at, I know Google have their Google Wi-Fi setup where you have multiple Wi-Fi devices around the house, and that might even out your coverage on your in your home. So yeah, Shayne, what do you think? What is your opinion?
I could be wrong because I'm not a fibre to the curb customer. I've got fibre to the premises, what I call the proper MBN.
Yes.
And I'm under the impression that you have to go with the ISP's modem, because with fibre to the curb, the modem is the thing that actually pushes the power back down the phone line to then power the device that's actually at the curb.
Right.
And it's obviously also configured to the ISP settings and that kind of stuff, because I know the issues that Phil had. He looked at sort of other options and all that kind of stuff. He was even going to go and get the modem from the ISP to kind of, help things along and hurry things up. And then he had the issues that he had. And because, like I said, because of the fact that it actually provides the power, I think you have to go with the one that comes with the ISP, or if not that, you actually have to at least get the same sort of type of modem that does the power supply thing.
Right. Look, you probably hit a point there. It's sort of fiber to the curb. I don't know if it'll be any different to fiber to. I'm fiber to the node, and as Shayne mentioned, he's fiber to the premises. Dear listener who sent us this email, depending on your circumstance of whether you can have your own modem and configure that. Either way, it probably seems like just accept what your ISP provides you, and then invest in a decent Wi-Fi network with a Wi-Fi router rather than get like a modem router instead to replace whatever's provided by ISP.
So while you were just talking then, I had enough time to go back to the guy's original email that he sent us, and the listener's name is Chris Dimo, Dimo. So Chris, hopefully that helps.
Yes.
What I'll do is Phil also got a copy of this email, because the address that you sent it to went to both Phil and myself. So when Phil comes back next episode, I'll remind him of the email to see whether he wants to kind of add his 2 cents worth in. But just to kind of also touch on what you were talking about, Daniel, in relation to the mesh solution. Yeah, you've got Google have got one. Netgear's got one. I think theirs is called Arlo. Could be wrong.
Yes. I think unless that's a webcam one, I'll double check.
Yeah, it could be the webcam stuff. But the thing that you got to remember with any mesh solution is that some are obviously more expensive than others. Some you might get a kit where they throw 3 in. Some you might get 1. Some are a nice kind of compact and they fit into a power socket neatly. Others are kind of like little antennas that come out of the power socket. The other thing is that if you've got like a double power socket, some of them are that big that they kind of go into the one power socket, but then they overreach into the neighbouring power socket, which basically means you can't use it. So they're the things you've got to factor in as well. So
is the Netgear Orbi?
Yes.
Is the mesh network, and Google have the original name of Google Wi-Fi.
Yep.
As the network.
And then who have got the Plume?
It's called Plume, is it?
Yeah.
Don't see it.
It's probably not even available in Australia, because it's something that they talk regularly about on Twitter.
Okay, it looks like it's a US only thing. That's probably why. Bloom is turning home Wi-Fi into a subscription service. So that is straight from the Verge there. $60 a year subscription to keep your router fully functional. Sounds terrible.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too to factor in on any equipment is whether it's updatable, whether it's over the air updatable, whether you have to go and actually look for the updates or whether they push them out to you. I know that I use a Draytech and I've got to go and actually look for the update. And they don't kind of push it out to me automatically.
And look, I'm kind of like, I'll probably mention too, like I mentioned, my setup is with the My Republic provided modem connected to my Apple time capsule that's providing the Wi-Fi around my system. The reason for that is I got a few Apple devices working with it, and the way Apple does its Wi-Fi is that, yes, you might have a 5 gigahertz and 2.5 gigahertz frequency around. It's all under the one name. So as far as my devices are concerned, it's just a one Wi-Fi network to connect to, and it works out fine. And I'm finding I'm in a one-bedroom apartment. I'm finding the Wi-Fi range of my Apple time capsule better than what the My Republic supplied modem is. And saying that, if you are tech savvy, you probably know that Apple have dropped their support, or will be dropping their support for any of their wireless devices. So sooner or later, I'm probably going to have to replace that as well. But in the meantime, it does the job well, so I'll stick with that.
Yep.
All right, let's move on and let's talk about some of the news that's happened this week. And we'll just stick with the one topic because there's a very small news announcement from Apple. They decided to change their name from Apple to Banana. So there's your... Wait, hang on. I've completely misread that news article. No, Apple had the 2018 Keynote announcement, and they announced several new products. One has been the new iPhones for this year, the different variations they have, as well as the next Apple Watch. So they've announced the iPhone XS, iPhone XS Max, and the iPhone XR, as well as announced the new Apple Watch 4, the 4th gen Apple Watch. So I'll see if I can grab some details of all the specifics about what's happened. We can go with the Apple Watch. It's a new edge-to-edge large display, about 30% larger, developed in 40mm and 44mm sizes. The new watch face has now 8 complications. Those are little applications you can see on the actual screen. Redesigned UIs are probably part of the new Watch OS update as well. The digital crown has haptic feedback on it as well. New processor, twice as fast as the older watches as well. Shayne, do you want to focus more on one of these devices, or would you like me to go on with the other features of the new?
No, I was just going to ask a couple of questions. I mentioned a couple of things about the watch. Now, I haven't actually seen the Keynote video version. I've heard the twit coverage of the audio version of the Keynote. Yep. So I've heard about the watch and what it does and what the phones do, but I haven't actually seen it. The thing that I'd like to see how it kind of works is the new ECG functionality in the watch.
Is that the heart rate monitor?
Yeah, they've got two. They've got the regular heart rate monitor, and then they got one where it.
So what it does, if you check out because it's all up on the Apple website, they're ready to go to you can pre-order these devices. So the Apple Watch Series 2 has got just on the bottom of the crown, it has a sensor there, and you put your finger on it, and it uses lights to check your pulse, check your finger, and it makes its readings in regards to your heart rate based on that. So I think there's may be incorrect about this, but I think there's also a new sensor on the bottom of the watch which already does the testing of your heart rate as well. So those advancements there. They've even had to get FDA approval in order to get this to be a legitimate source of measuring your heart rate. So looking at other features, low heart rate monitoring, screen heart rhythm in background. New electrical sensors allows the electrocardiogram, ECG takes 30 seconds to produce a PDF that you can even send to your doctor as well. So you've definitely gone full hog into the health side.
Not that I'm a doctor, but what I know of an ECG is they're the ones that they put the things around your chest.
Yes.
And then they send electrical pulses, or they measure the electrical kind of current through the heart.
Mm-hmm.
How are they doing it when both things are kind of at the wrist? Surely it's not like the electrical kind of pulse comes from the watch, goes through the heart, and then comes back. And then the reason why you have to kind of touch it with your other hand and touch the crown is because that kind of completes the circuit.
Well, I'm glad you've asked me, Shayne, because I too am not a doctor. So I don't know how that all works. I think the fact that I have the FDA looking into this, or getting the clearance from them, and as well to getting other countries or other sort of health governance bodies from other countries to look into to see whether this is legitimate or not. And presumably so, it must be legitimate enough that they can use these services. Either way, it's sort of, I don't think this is the end all to say, hey, you are having a heart attack or you need to check up. I think, if anything, it's an early sign indicator to go, hey, I'm a device that this is what I sort of measure, and I'm measuring this thing. You should go to a professional, not us non-doctors that you're listening or watching, but actually go to an actual doctor and actually have a checkup with their multi-$1,000 machines that are probably way better telling if there is an issue with your body or specifically your heart, rather than trusting a $400 smartwatch that you got as well. So I think this does give it an advantage of other sort of smart devices that, yes, a lot of them have monitoring, heart monitoring sensors. To have the FDA, to have an actual health body say, yep, this is actually gets our approval, is a big thing and probably a big selling point. I've even told some people that have heart conditions that they thought, I would be interested to get something like this. What personally I'm annoyed with the Apple Watch is they bought, I'm sure a few months ago, Apple bought a sleep detecting company or software. I haven't implemented it. I actually use my Apple Watch to check my sleep patterns, actually, and there are a lot of third-party apps that take advantage of the sensors on and all the measured results from the Apple Watch. And I was actually hoping that it would actually do something about sleep monitoring, but they don't do it. So
apparently and we covered this in a couple of episodes ago, a few episodes ago is what I was trying to say. The more accurate way of doing it is to have something you're kind of lying on, whether it be a pillow or something under the mattress or whatever.
I think there is a device, and there may be in Apple stores, I haven't seen it in a while, but it is, think of it like a electric blanket that is, it's not as big as one, of course, but it's sort of, it rolls on your actual bed and it will measure your movements and whatnot. So that, I think, is probably a better measure of your sleep patterns. I used to have a Fitbit before I had the Apple Watch for the last few years, and that measured my sleeping pattern quite well. Not that the current setup I have is that bad, but there are some cases. I'm pretty sure I've slept 8 hours, not 3 hours, according to the app. But yeah, my sort of disappointment is like, yes, there's definitely some cool features of the new Apple Watch, but I am annoyed it is missing out any sort of sleep pattern system as good as its heart monitoring one. So I'll resort to using third-party apps to still tell me how my sleep has gone.
Yep, fair enough too.
What else has been announced? As we mentioned, of course, was the new iPhone. So let me see what else. So they had the iPhone XS or the XS Max. So the iPhone XS is a 5.8-inch Super Retina OLED display. With the Max, guess what? It is way bigger. In fact, it's the new biggest iPhone you can get at 6.5-inch Super Retina OLED display. They got a new IP68 resistance and also a stronger glass casing, or glass front as well, developed from Apple. New version of Face ID, so should be definitely quicker, and especially because they have a new A12 Bionic chip as well. 12 megapixel back camera and 7 megapixel front camera as well. And so definitely the usual other upgrades that you can get with your new iPhone. It's faster, it's got a better camera system, but I think the big thing has been it's definitely a bigger phone, the iPhone XS Max. But the other big thing about it is the price as well. So if I'm right and I'm looking at the Australian site of the Apple Store, for the Australian dollar of in Australian dollars, the iPhone XS starts from $1,629, and the iPhone XS Max starts at $1,799. And if you just got to have all that capacity, if you want to get top of the range iPhone XS Max with 512 gigs of storage, you're looking at $2,369.
So we know that Phil's already ordered the XS, and he went with the 256 version, didn't he?
Yes, reluctantly so. I think one point Phil has made throughout the week has been we still have the 64 gig and 256 and 512 gig sort of tiers of storage. What's happened to 128? Yeah. Like that's a nice sweet spot, and I think it's more the fact that Apple surprisingly wants your money. That if 64 is not enough, you're going to have to go to 56.
Yeah. So that would have set him back probably around about the $2,000 mark then.
No. I think it's still under the $2,000 aspect there as well. The other phone that was announced was the iPhone XR, and this one's a very interesting one. This, just to iterate, they got rid of the iPhone X now, so there's no more of that tier. So we're talking
that
about
was weird.
Yeah, so they got rid of the X's just because I think they don't want to cannibalize their lineup already with having two variations of the X. Now, the XR is an interesting one because this has not an OLED, but the goddamn best LCD liquid retina display that Apple can market to you. So it's got that. The other thing is aluminum casing around instead of having this sort of glass stainless steel casing on their phones. The other thing too is they all come in colors. So you have white, black, blue, yellow, coral, and the product red. At launch, you can get, when it's out, you can get those particular color looks of it as well. It's got one camera as well. So unlike the XS and the XS Max, it's got two cameras. This one has only one, but still can do portrait mode as well. So it's doing some clever software stuff behind the scenes in order to do all that. It's got the same camera specs regardless, 12 megapixel back, 7 front, and the A12 Bionic chip on the XSs as well. So practically it is pretty much a cheaper version of the XS. Yep. Shayne, what do you think about these new iPhones, and which ones would you be getting?
None, because I'm an Android user.
Yeah, fair enough.
But having said it, like I touched on, I thought it was weird that they got rid of the X or the 10, because when they had the 7 and then went to the 7S, they didn't drop the 7. When they went from the 6 to the 6S, they didn't drop the 6. So I don't understand.
And they've dropped the 5 SE as well, so you can no longer get the sort of cheaper phone. Like the cheapest phone you can get now is the iPhone 7. That's brand new. The 4.7-inch version is $749.
Yeah, true. And the other thing I find a bit odd is that the cheaper one, you can have a wider range of colours than you can in the expensive one. Is that because it's made from a different material?
Most likely, that's probably the reason why. So they can probably, well, it could be, in fact, mainly the main reason maybe because it's a different material. But the other thing too, I think it's the market.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been focusing on the XS and the XS Max just because of how crazy expensive it is and how fancy it is. I think a lot of people are dismissing the XR like it's just like a cheaper version of the X just before. And okay, in Australian prices, it's pretty expensive at about the $1,000 mark. Let me just double check that because here at My Tech Opinion, we make sure we get most of our facts right. At 1,229 Australian dollars. But in the US, it's actually 749 US dollars, which puts it around a sort of high-end, mid-tier to top-of-the-range phone. And for what is practically the same specs as the iPhone XS, with, okay, not as good screen, it's got an aluminium case. It's actually a bit thicker than your XSs. But a lot of people are predicting that this will probably be the bestseller.
Yeah.
With the Apple range. So
yep, because it's going to be good enough for people.
Exactly, and that's probably it is. It's good enough for the majority of people, not us, or me anyway, Apple fanboys and people that want the latest and greatest in tech.
I thought you dabbled in the Android world a couple of months ago.
Oh, I've done it for years. So I've had I had like an Samsung Galaxy S5 for a year or so. So I was in that round, and I even dabbled in Windows Phone as well. That's because Telstra provided me a bit of a sidetrack. When the Windows Phone was released in Australia a few years ago, they gave a few so-called social media influencers, and I was given a Windows Phone for free, a HTC phone to test out, a Windows Phone. But yeah, I've gone through different operating systems, and I've just stuck with iOS iPhone just because I'm just used to it, and I enjoy it. I do like Android. I just prefer iOS more. That's it. But yeah, I'm currently got an iPhone 10, iPhone X, which no longer exists anymore, and looking at sort of the costing and any advantages of what the XS is offering is sort of, it's not really interesting me. It literally is the S cycle. Yep. So we're just seeing just small iterations, small improvements in the phone.
Yeah, so you're still going to get iOS 12 when it comes out, aren't you? You probably
That's right. So I'm looking forward to my memojis, or whatever the silly emoji thing, kind of like that Snapchat emoji stuff. You can get, what was that called again? Snapchat. What did they call it? Forgot what it was called. I know there was a specific app that was handling that. But either way, I'm going to get my Memoji in my iOS 12, so I'll be happy with that.
So the other thing about the Keynote, before we move on and have our first break, is what they never mentioned, because there were a lot of rumours going around that they were going to bring out an iPad. There were a lot of rumours they might have even rolled out an Mac Mini, I think, got a mention. There was rumours around a MacBook Pro, or not a MacBook Pro, but the replacement for the rubbish bin one.
Yeah, HomePod. That's not even a year old.
No.
You're talking about the Mac Pro.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that people thought they were going to mention that they never did for one reason or another.
I think it's just we're probably expecting too much from Apple and not like being on their side. I think it's just the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, dear listener or viewer, I think it's been a while since they've mentioned anything else apart from iOS and iPhone updates in September for the last few years. And the rumor mills may have some points or may have seen some things, but they're probably, so far the last few years, Apple have just really mentioned the iPhone and iOS updates, and that's it. And I think we may be hyping it up too much and expecting a lot more other stuff. What is somewhat disappointing, and as much as this was in the rumor mill, like not that I really cared about it, has been the sort of the new charger. This is the
that thing, yeah. The mat.
Yeah, that's that the Air Mat or whatever the Air charger from Apple. So I can actually get the real name of this. The Air Power wireless charger. Where is it? It's been nearly a year since you mentioned it, Apple, and not that I actually care, but it's sort of like, okay, something seriously stuffed up that they haven't announced it as of yet. So yeah,
I think the rumors are that they're having trouble because they want to charge different things on there that take different voltages and different amperages and wattages and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's probably it. But it's sort of like it's very unusual to announce something that, hey, we got this product, and you would think that actually have worked out the kinks, but it's sort of it still hasn't been released yet. And we've seen sort of the similar thing with the HomePod that has been several months since they announced it. When it's come out, it's somewhat rubbish.
Yeah.
Sounds great, but it's sort of, you have Sonos or even your Google Home equivalents that are more useful.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Do you want to have a break?
Yes, we might as well go for a break, but do stay tuned to this podcast or this YouTube video, and we'll be back talking about our feature topic, which is eSports. Okay, welcome back to My Tech Opinion. We are going into our feature topic. This episode, we're going to talk about eSports. So, Shayne, what do you know about eSports? What do you think about eSports when I tell you the word eSports?
Before we decided we were going to do this topic, not a lot. I obviously done a little bit of research to kind of at least look half intelligent in this conversation we're about to have.
Yeah.
So I know that it's basically tournaments that where people get together and play video games. I know there's probably a particular, I'm guessing we'll cover it. There's probably particular types of video games that work better than others. I can't see, things like Space Invaders and Pac-Man and all that kind of stuff being an esports thing. I know that they, especially now, it's big enough for them to kind of even have like stadiums dedicated to an esports event. I don't know whether they can do it like online. Can you have people basically do it from their living room if they've got a good enough internet connection?
It is definitely the internet side of things that makes it probably a distinction to traditional sports, and we use that term for your football and soccer and basketball more. And like we can probably even go into the topic of what is a sport in general, but that is definitely one advantage that esports has. It's because it's related so much to tech and internet. That is definitely huge numbers in regards to its broadcast onto that platform. But you're absolutely right. You pretty much have actually covered a lot more of like esports, and I would have probably said the same thing. So yeah, esports in general is pretty much a form of competition using video games. So if we were to have maybe a comparison just to get an idea of more the sports side, imagine esports if we were to think of your leagues, think of your codes, and think of your team. So it is a electronic version. It is using video games to sort of replicate what you see in sort of more traditional sports. So in regards for leagues, you got the AFL, you got the NBA, you got the NRL, you have NFL. You have all these different leagues that are involved with the one sort of code. If you think about AFL, it's involved with football. There are definitely leagues in esports, and so probably one of the biggest ones is called ESL. But you also have you have the Australian Esports League as well, funny enough, in Australia too. But a lot of these leagues have think of it as multiple codes. So our thinking of codes would be, okay, you play football or soccer. The codes in general are different games. So popular ones, for example, are like League of Legends, Dota 2, CSGO or Counter-Strike Global Offensive in a full term, Call of Duty, Heroes of the Storm, etc. So that's the sort of, to make it easy to understand what esports is and to sort of connect it to how it is in more traditional sports that we see.
Okay. So just to get my head around it a bit more.
Yeah.
See, when I think of a league, that league is associated with a particular sport in regular sport. What you're saying is that a league then gets broken up into different different kind of video games. So the
That's right.
the league isn't necessarily, you don't have a league for even though it's called League of Legends, you don't have like one for League of Legends. You don't have a league for Call of Duty. You have the one league, and I'm not getting the connection between how you can have multiple sports in the one league kind of thing.
Well, I think that's probably the difference between traditional sports and esports. The fact that think of the league not necessarily as that, okay, this is the one league that represents that one sport, one code, but think of it as sort of this is the organizer and the production company of organizing different sports or competitions. So it's not restricted in regards to location or sort of the number of participants. It's sort of, okay, we establish ourselves as a group where we all decide and make up a competition, and we will also make arrangements with, because remember too, a lot of these games are made by big publishers. So Riot Games is a big gaming publisher that's behind League of Legends, and they will make a deal with Riot Games, go, hey, we want to make your game as a competition, and Riot Games will give them the blessing of, yep, this is our Riot Game official competition, and they can use that to sort of gain momentum, to get people interested in participating into it, and in that sense, getting the advertising thing. The other thing we forgot to mention is in regards to teams as well. So you would think, let's say with the AFL, you have, is it 16, if I'm right, if I'm not forgetting probably other newer.
Oh, yeah, then there's 18 teams?
18? Yeah. So you have 18 teams that are set up. The
No, it might be 16, actually, because there's top 8 and then bottom 8. Yeah, it might be 16. You might be right.
So with esports, the number of teams staggering. I don't have numbers on me, but you can make up a esports team and call yourself the My Tech Opinion esports team, and you may focus on one particular code in amongst us. So we've all in a team together, we'll focus on League of Legends, but we may have offshoots of our own team of, okay, we have players that focus on one code or one game, and then we'll have team other members of the team focus on other different codes. And if an ESL or another league makes up a competition, we would have an application process of go, we are a legitimate esports team, where this is our records, this is our sort of our opinion why we should be in the group, and as well there'll be an admission fee in order to get involved with the team. And it could be as big as probably the biggest teams in the world have about a $10 million establishment fee, and then you have sort of very local ones that are maybe $10-20
okay,
sort of get involved. I guess the way to wrap around it is that since it is internet based, the breadth and the ease of access is huge compared to what a traditional sport is. It's saying, hey Shayne, you should go and join the AFL. I was like, are you kidding me? It's sort of like age aside, but it's also like, hang on, I'm not a sports person. I don't play the game and stuff. But like for a broader audience, that a lot of people will be playing these video games, we're looking at the best of the best in these games, probably joining up with teams and representing their team or even their country with some other matches as well that are sort of country focused or even state focused. So Overwatch is another popular esport, and they have Overwatch competitions and their organizer is, or the creator is, Blizzard Entertainment, and so they would have different events based on, let's say, okay, this is all in the US region, so Los Angeles and Boston and all that will have their own city teams that will represent that team in these games.
So, a couple of questions out of all that.
Yep.
And I'll do the one that's just come to mind now. I guess you have to factor in the internet connection. If like it would be a waste of time for us here to maybe take part in a competition that is based around sort of an American city because of just the latency and all that kind of stuff. We'd get shot like within seconds.
Now, the thing with the esports that actually are at those physical locations, so if we were, let's say, an Australian was to compete in esports with the American counterpart,
yep,
they're done at location. So the Australian would travel to that country and will be participating there. In regards to training, in regards to learning the game and stuff, yes, definitely there's the internet aspect of, you're at advantage or disadvantage depending on your internet speeds, on how you're competing with other groups. But a lot of the bigger teams or bigger sort of competitions, they've done on the same geographical location. So if there's a esports tournament in Melbourne, for example, that tournament will be held in Melbourne with all participants being in Melbourne.
Okay. And do they just have the one video game, or is there a selection of games, or?
It depends on that sort of code you're competing against. So there may be the league may announce particular codes or particular games that they will be playing, and so you would apply, your team will be going for X game.
Okay.
For example. So I may mention with Melbourne as well, a few weeks ago, Melbourne had the Melbourne eSports Open that was held in Rod Laver Arena, and I was able to attend. And it was definitely an eye-opener for me in regards to esports. I would say personally myself, not to discredit everything, but I haven't been that involved with esports. I'm a gamer, I guess, lack of a better term. I do play games on different consoles, different platforms of PlayStation and PC. I do Twitch streaming, so I stream my games online. But in regards for esports, I haven't really been that involved. But until I got into actually visiting an actual esports event, it clicked of like, it's just a sporting event. It is, you have humongous fans, the huge fan groups that are participating and getting involved and are very enthusiastic what's going on. And you couldn't tell the difference of whether this was a football match or a League of Legends game, apart from different team logos and merchandise and different ways of supporting your team. So you have people dressing up in their team's colors or team's mascots or whatnot, and you probably have an equivalent with esports with people dressing up as characters in the game or wearing their team's merch.
So, sorry, I'm firing all these questions there.
No, that's fine.
Is it like with AFL, right? You go to an AFL game and it is Team A versus Team B, and that's all you get, and then at the end of the game you go home. When you go to an esports event, is it just the one game that's happening at the time, or have they got different games all over the place? Or
it depends on how it's been organized. I somewhat vague. My personal experience with the Melbourne esports thing was that they had 4 different games. So if anyone not been in Rod Laver Arena, you have different arenas in the one location. So if you go to one arena, they'll be playing one sport. You go to another arena, they'll be playing a different sport. And so being that it's all on computers, it's not an actual, they need an actual field to do it. The one arena that would have had the one sport playing was split up into 4 different sports playing at the same time. And they were just able to divide it up because, they don't need to have a whole court to play it. They would just section an area that's where we'll have the computers at. But at that event, it was probably 10,000 people that attended, and you had thousands of people going into the different sports arena. The main one was Overwatch that people attended. And but to answer your question, it depends on the scenario. There's some stadiums in the US and in Asia that are dedicated just for esports, and it may just be that one stadium, one game that's played. And they may, for us, we'll go one game and just sort of see how a team plays, but they may have like a couple of teams playing in a row, and they'll play several matches of that game to get to the preliminary final to find out who that winner would be of that match.
Okay, cool. And can I be on multiple teams and play multiple different games, or?
Yes, but I think if you're going to be playing one game, you should be dedicated to that game. So I would say that the skills that you would have playing a particular game don't translate to other games. So not saying that you can't be good at all games, but it's sort of what's interesting with esports. It's taking that next level in regards to playing computer games. Yes, computer games, you have your keyboard, your mouse, or you have your controller, and you can play that game. And you would think, okay, this is the one input playing the one game. But many games have different sort of gaming structures, either to be a sort of a top level, top view of a game, and you're controlling characters and leading to where you go. So there's a strategy base to it. There may be other games where it's sort of first person perspective of a shoot 'em up with having teams of equivalent sort of abilities, or I mentioned other games like Overwatch where you have 6 versus 6, and you can have multiple different characters that have different abilities, and it's sort of learning those different abilities, their advantages and disadvantages, and competing against each other. So I wouldn't say there's any law or rule that you cannot play in different games. But if you're serious in esport, it's just easier to sort of be the master of that one game and be damn good at it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And I want to chuck in something as well. I guess the other thing is like, okay, it's all well and good to talk about esports. So what's the big deal about it? So if we were to put an equivalent of how big a sporting event or how big sporting is, so if you were to look at American sort of games like the NBA and stuff, their sort of value, I think with the NBA, is about $12 billion as sort of an industry. If we were to look at esports, in 2017, it was evaluated to be 1.5 billion.
Oh, wow.
So not only is it sort of a big number, but in comparison, it's sort of, okay, it's not as big as your traditional sports, but it's still quite a significant thing to sort of, okay, it's a big industry to consider. The other aspect to consider as well is that in regards to the growth, in regards to the popularity, and also the audience, it is skyrocketing up in regards to its value. Whereas a lot of traditional sports are, I wouldn't say a plateau, but it's sort of like it's you can put so much in your marketing and your promotion of that sport that it may hit a particular point. Whereas as we kind of touched on before, you have the power of the internet. That sure, you can have tens of thousands of people attending an actual event physically, but you can also broadcast it on the internet where you have millions of people watching that live event, and having those millions of views means you have advertisers that are probably interested in getting those views. And speaking of those views, the actual audience that are watching this, and I even saw this firsthand being at the Melbourne eSports, majority of people are young people, probably under 25, maybe even starting as young as maybe 14. And you have a lot of families that are there as well, bringing their kids to go and check out a sports game. And that is a demographic that advertisers love to get into, because that's the demographic, the millennials,
yep,
that have ad blockers and are stopping any ads online. They may not have a TV. They may not be, they're not buying newspapers or magazines. They're avoided all traditional aspects, and they're watching YouTube and Twitch.
Yep. So, and I guess the other advantage is if you're getting them in young, they will continue through obviously the more of their life with whatever product that you're trying to flog them.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be the advertisers' hope as well. They're hoping if Coca-Cola puts an ad in, which they do, they're a sponsor of some teams. Hell, McDonald's was sponsoring the Overwatch League here in Australia, the Melbourne eSport event. But yeah, that's their hope, that they're getting into a new audience to actually get their attention as well. Speaking of getting the attention of things, the other thing that's to add to the point of how much money is involved in the industry, and I mentioned before that some big tournaments that have a $10 million entry fee. the reason a lot of these leagues can afford is one, they're just that popular, but also an interesting phenomenon is that traditional sports are actually buying esports teams to get involved. So there's a case of a lot of NBA teams actually buying esports teams to represent themselves in these competitions. But a local Australian equivalent is we have the Adelaide Crows and the Essendon Bombers actually buying esports team or a esports team to represent themselves in esports tournaments.
So that's an interesting kind of matchup. Because obviously do they do that? Because you know how like the video games based around the sports, like there's an AFL video game, a VFL video, NRL video game. There's games around basketball. You're not saying that these teams that say that the Bombers own, they're not a team that just basically plays AFL, the video game.
Nah, these are. Think of it as they're investing in a team to play on different codes. So, in regards to you mentioning the AFL and NRL having their own video games, I think that's just more for the AFL to have a game that you pay the game and the AFL will get some money.
Yep.
From that, I think it's just as a general case, people play that game. But for these AFL teams to buy up these esports teams to represent themselves, it's so, hey, we put money in this team, which would then our investment in it will make them a better team to be representing us in general in a bigger audience. And it may not necessarily mean that, hey, a person in China that's going to be watching our Bombers esports team be a Essendon Bomber supporter, but the fact that their investment in time and money into it would trickle down to us. So it's like, remember how there was this big campaign to try and get AFL into other countries?
Yep.
And it's still happening, and we still have games in China and sort of promoting our teams there. So that's sort of getting the time to organize a team and then sending a group of footballers to go and play there.
Yep.
It is easier and cheaper and a bigger audience if let's invest in an esports team and make them as best of an esports team as we can. And you can broadcast your name to a much bigger audience for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. As long as, like if you've got someone like a British Airways that sponsors someone, they know that it's an airline.
Yeah.
I don't think, say, someone who's watching the Bombers team in a tournament in the US would necessarily make the connection that the sponsor is an AFL football team.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. It's the focus isn't necessarily to go, hey, we want to make the AFL or our sort of team be known by an American. Is the fact that the trickle down in regards to the being invested in that team and that team having the representation and earning money in a bigger code, that trickles down to them. Think of it more of as investment for the team rather than sort of like, we want to make AFL a thing.
Yep.
That's the approach and why a lot of these teams are getting involved. Because the other thing too is sort of, we touched on the fact that there's a lot of, like I was making the comparisons with the sports teams, is that that's what esports need. Esports as being an online computer-based sort of entity, it sort of already has a big audience from being broadcast mostly for free on different broadcasting channels on like Twitch and YouTube, and now Facebook is getting involved in that as well. But they need traditional sports to serve, bring them up to that next level. It's kind of like how the women's AFL is, that you have this new team, this new league that's been set up with new players there. And it's a long-term investment, but you are bringing this team up to a particular level that is a standard that a lot of traditional viewers of a sport will look at. What I've noticed that yes, if you look at an esports event, very well produced. Don't get me wrong, very high standard. But had a friend of mine that attended with me to the Melbourne esports event, and I'll do a shout out for him. So he's Shayne Callanan. He's a sports geek, and he's a digital agent for sports teams, and even worked for people like the Collingwood, and I'm pretty sure Collingwood and Adelaide as well. I will double check that. I want to upset his clients as well, but like he's done Adelaide and Collingwood, Brisbane Lions as well. So he's sponsored a few. Not sponsored. He's been involved as being an advisor for some of these teams. But we were watching the Overwatch event together, and it was fantastic production, great sort of styles. But there was a moment when they had the two teams here, and they were showing off their sports logos, and they didn't have the names. So for anyone that's new there, especially us, we're looking at it and we'll go, I don't know which team is which. And I know it's a small thing in regards to having just the name of the team, but it's those small things that is sort of like, okay, they got the idea, but they need a traditional involvement to sort of, bring them up to that level of what we're so used to in regards to traditional media. The other thing too is an advertiser sort of point that since as much as esports is such a big thing, you still need to have traditional advertisers involved. And so if you're going to say, hey, Coca-Cola, we got, all these people that are watching it on YouTube and stuff, like that's great. But we want this on television. We want this on radio. We want to make this mainstream, not for the fact that, well, maybe partly to get more people involved, but you wanted to sort of like, you want it anywhere and everywhere. You can watch the AFL on television or listen to it on the radio, and we want the same thing with esports.
Yep.
To be that broad.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I saw that you're trying to send me a chat thingy, but I had to it kind of came up at the bottom. So,
did it?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so that was just a link to my friend who is one. And I will chuck a link in the show notes. He did an interview with Nigel Smart, who is a former Adelaide footballer, who is now the chief operating officer at the Adelaide Football Club. And he interviewed him and talked about his involvement because he's heading up the Adelaide esports team as well. So definitely very insightful for especially to older people in regards to, hey, we're all new to esports. What's the involvement for esports? And definitely a good episode to check out as well. There are definitely a few links I've chucked in the show notes that you can more than welcome to have a look in this episode's show notes to read up more about what's to go with esports.
So the teams are they teams like as in just associated more with kind of brands and not necessarily with countries, or are there countries that kind of get together and compete as a country as well?
It's a bit of both. So with Overwatch, for example, they wanted sort of country or sort of in the US sense had like different cities. So it is kind of weird in a sense because they're going to have to do it from the ground up. But it's like, okay, we're going to be investing that. We'll put X amount of money for a team to be set up in this town. So Los Angeles, for example. So we want an Overwatch team. So this is a league putting money in to have these teams set up. So it's sort of like the manufacturer of the game, as well as manufacturing the competition, and as well as putting in money for these teams.
Yep.
And the end of the day is just so they can, hey, we need to start this group. But the other opposite end of that is sort of, I can have me and a group of friends make up an esports team, and this is our name of our team, the Daniel Esports Group, and all esports team. Buy the website, get the Twitter and Facebook account, and that's it. And we can just start getting involved in tournaments. That Joe Blow can set up a tournament using a game, and we can put in some money for, making it a proper competition. And by doing that, you're building up a reputation as yourself as an esports team, and you giving yourself a reputation of like, hey, these guys are pretty good, and it can go from then up to getting more supporters in your team, getting more team members, so you can find out other players that want to get involved. And that leads up to probably another point, another interesting thing too. So you have a lot of talent scouts that will go to VFL tournaments or VFL games and actually see if there's any good players in there. And you can have the electronic version of that, of actually seeing someone's name and seeing how well they are going in a tournament, or even in a game in general. Like a lot of games have this sort of like highest ranking players on different platforms, and you can see who's the best ones. Like, oh, that guy's from Australia, let's hunt him down and find him and see if we can get him on our team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So it can be, because you mentioned that, you know, that there's a lot of money involved, especially in the bigger tournaments.
Yep.
So people individually could, and they probably do, make a living out of it.
That's something I'm not too familiar with in regards to how much money, but yeah, there are people that this is their sort of career.
Yep.
As well. For a local sense, I don't think there's too many sort of esports people that are making a full-time career. Australia is still behind compared to South Korea and the US in regards to sort of having big esports teams or influence in general. But it's factors like probably a big thing that the NBN out of anything has sort of helped out, and now people have better internet connections and have better training options between different teams around the world, or just practicing in general. And it's hopefully can lead to more bigger audience, more money involved in the local investment we would have here, and then hopefully more people making that a full-time career. The other thing to consider with esports, people think, okay, you know, just like some fat guy sitting on a chair. Like they're showing the show behind the scenes with how Essendon is treating the esports team, and they're treating them just like a normal, like they'll do with their own sports team. Is that they have to have healthy diet, they have to exercise, they have training sessions involved, and they're treating it just like a sport.
So they're fairly fit people then.
For the most part, one or two of them look still a little bit chunky, but they are enforcing an actual, okay, you know, we want to make you as good as you can be, and it's not a fact of, sure, it's a factor of your talent on the keyboard and mouse, but it's sort of, you need to be at your top condition. And remember, these are people under 20.
Yep.
They should already have their youth as being a big advantage of them, but it's sort of, again, it's a long-term investment that hopefully we can keep these players for longer, and putting that as sort of a structure of like, okay, we're investing in making sure this team is going well, not just, it goes beyond just the game, is that they're mentally and physically at their peak.
Yep. But I mean, just to kind of make the contrast about, you know, you don't necessarily have to be fit to do kind of sport. I mean,
no.
Look at Shayne Warne; he got away with it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's definitely some outliners of, but you know, we can make fun of Shayne Warne, but he was a good bowler. He was very talented, so he doesn't have a six pack and all that, and definitely have your smacks and beer as well, and miscellaneous calls. But there's definitely some outliners, but I think, like I mentioned before, it's a long-term investment of making these teams as good as you can, and it does go beyond it. Just like, okay, you can be good at the computer, you need to be practicing a lot, and you need to be in a physical aspect and mental aspect top of your game as well.
So I mean, that's an interesting kind of point, that the benefits that it has, obviously, you know, and we've covered this on previous episodes as well, but the reaction time, the coordination, even though you're kind of isolated, well, you know, because we've said that the actual tournaments happen at a location, you actually have to, you know, physically go out and socialize people within the real world, so you're not actually like the stereotype says, you're not actually necessarily
You're not like a
in your
basement
bedroom.
dweller.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not sort of basement dweller living at your parents' home. Nothing wrong with that. But it's sort of there's not that stereotype that every single gamer is like that.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's definitely some practices you do online. That's probably the easiest way you can play with anyone else. But yeah, these tournaments is we want you to be in these actual physical locations. Like with the back to the Essendon discussion, they have a room dedicated for eSports, and the players are expected to rock up to the Essendon headquarters and train there.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
It's actually at the same. It's at the same Windy Hill kind of location as the.
I think they moved now. They're no longer in Windy Hill. I think they're down at Essendon Airport, the new head office. But yeah, they're expected to rock up and train. Yeah, wow. just like a regular traditional football team.
Wow. If I get time while I'm over there, I might have to suss that out. Yeah,
check it out. Put on your Bombers uniform. Go, yeah. I'm veteran esports player here to show the guys what's going on. You can check it out.
I actually used to barrack for Essendon before the Eagles came along.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, I'm a Bombers supporter. So for me, it's just my luck that we're talking about it a lot, and the Bombers have been involved with esports as well. And look, I guess we can go into, I think there's still a reluctance or still sort of a criticism and I guess jokes in regards for esports. Like, I'm not here defending esports, and I totally get the sort of, okay, that seems kind of weird that we're watching a bunch of people playing games, pretty much. But it's sort of like, okay, we do the same thing with traditional sports. We don't play football, we don't play basketball, but we're happy to watch other people play basketball or play those games. So why would that be an equivalent to watching people play a video game?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, there's also a difference between being at the game, watching, like, going to a football game and watching it is a different atmosphere than staying home and watching on telly.
Yeah, and that was my experience too. Being at the Melbourne eSports thing was sort of like, oh wow, it's sort of, you get involved with the group and all that. And like, I watch games like Overwatch because I've played Overwatch and I know how the game plays. And like, not that I had an issue with the other games that were involved, but it's just, I don't know how the games work. But Overwatch, yeah, I've played it, and I'm watching these guys like, oh, that's a cool move. I would never do that in the game, but because these guys are top of the game, it's sort of like, oh wow, there's some really cool winning moves or terrible losses that they've able to do that. I play the game. It's kind of like me playing football. It's like, oh, I can kick the ball and stuff. But it's sort of, there's people doing some crazy tricks.
Yeah,
with kicking the football.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I was going to see if I've got any more questions, because this was much of a learning experience for me, is what it probably is for our audience members as well.
I think not we'll finish off now, but who knows if you got any more questions. I think if you asked me a few months ago what I thought of esports, I wasn't that interested in it. And I kind of felt like, is it really a sport? Like, sure, you can argue there's a physical aspect that, being on a computer for a few hours and being just fully concentrated can be as exhausting as doing a physical activity.
Yeah.
But I guess finally attending an esports event and actually seeing the enthusiasm, seeing it in person, it's sort of like, this is fun. I get the appeal of it now. Because like, it's all well and good to probably watch a YouTube video about it and stuff, but like, if you don't know what's going on, it's sort of like, oh, well, what's the deal? They are trying their best to sort of still make it more open. So what I found interesting at that event was that they will go into the game, and there are different things you can do in a game, like different sort of matches, like capture the flag or the first one to the base and stuff. And they would actually spend not a minute, but I'll spend a few seconds explaining what's going to happen. And like, you never have a sort of, okay, we're going to go to a football event. This is how it works. The team's going to try and have to get in the middle of the two big posts to get X points, or the side post to get a point. That's the equivalent that they are doing at these games. And not that it's that hard to explain the rules, but it's sort of like, they're doing it because they need to be mindful of the bigger audience that may not know about the game.
Yeah, usually if you go to a football game, like when I went to the NFL when I was in the US last year, I knew conceptually how the game worked, but if it wasn't for the people sitting next to me explaining kind of the nuances of the game, I would have gone, oh, there would have been at least half of the things happening in that game. I had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah, you probably have an idea like, okay, that guy is in the blue suit and he's got to get to the other side. And then, I think I was in the same years ago when I first watched a rugby game, and I go, oh, okay, why are they stopping? I didn't get it, but it's sort of like once you have someone explaining to us. So the fact that they have the ability to do it and to live during the tournament to explain it, it's like, oh, okay, that's actually quite good. For me, playing a game, I knew what they had to do, but if my mum was there, if my parents were there watching it, oh, okay, I understand it. But the other side of it too is sort of what's interesting with, again, I'll mention again with Overwatch, was that the camera would move to the different players' perspectives. So the game involves a team of 6 competing against each other for a particular sort of version of a game. Like I mentioned, there's a capture the flag mode or a move thing from A to B, and the team has to stop the other team doing that. And the way to show it, it's a first-person perspective game. So the camera will be changing to different team members, or they'll have a special camera that will look at the actual game arena, the game map, and you can see all the characters doing their thing as well. So it's sort of like next level of, imagine having the footballer's perspective and seeing what they see.
Yeah. So it's almost like a full-blown production in the same way that, something like you might watch on ESPN, you've got commentators, you've got a director that's changing the camera shots, all that kind of stuff.
Well, funny you mention ESPN. They have a dedicated eSports channel now. Right. That they do news catch up as well. Not if it's the same equivalent, but it's sort of Crown Betting as a local analogy. They have an eSports podcast and eSports betting.
Oh, really?
Now as well for local and international events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, given that it's an esport event, it's all online, all that kind of stuff. It's not a physical. It's not a physical. It's not an. It's not a. What's the word I'm looking for? Because of the online component, I guess. Is there any fear of it being kind of hacked or anything like that?
Not really, but I'll mention the hack thing. Not that it's happened, but it's an interesting point. No, the way it'll be like a LAN party. Yep. It'll be like that's equivalent. They're going to have these events. Is that all the computers will be in the one place and working with each other, and there is a small, if any, chance of it being hacked because it's so closed down to just that physical. Literally, that physical event. There's no way a hacker can get
So there's no internet connectivity. It's basically just a local network.
Yeah, like a local server that will be there. I think there are. Don't get me wrong. I think there are definitely a case they'll have a server as well. But it's sort of if the hacker can get into that server, then that affects everyone. Beyond the esports event, it'll be people playing that game. So it'll be customized or sort of sanctioned off internet access to that server, or even literally a local server there at the event that can control it.
Yeah.
But when you mention hacking, here's an interesting aspect. You know how if with the AFL they may have a new rule?
Yeah.
That will come in and they'll have a new rule of, okay, you can't hold the ball that long, or you can't tackle a person at a particular event, and that, upsets people. People have to change their sort of tactics and stuff, or people get into trouble. The equivalent of that in esports is patches. So there may be a new patch that has to be installed on the game, and that will probably be changing how powerful a character is, or how a particular weapon is used. And so there can be cases of people training in this game, and this patch can just change how the game feels or works for that person. They would have trained for nothing sometimes as well. So there are cases like that. That's the equivalent of like a rule change or just a change of how the game feels or plays because just of how weapons change or how characters' abilities are different.
Yeah. They wouldn't do. They'd obviously give the players a heads up over them, and they like do that halfway through a tournament or whatever.
No, there's been cases where it's been happening middle of the tournament.
Oh wow!
I funny enough, made friends of an actual esports commentator when I was at the eSports Melbourne Open, and I had a chat with him about what he does. And one of the things he mentioned is that we had a case where CS:GO, a Counter-Strike game, where it's sort of think of a 6 versus, I think it's 6 or 4 versus 4 team that one plays the terrorists and one plays the good guys to stop the terrorists of, let's say, planting a bomb, and they have to stop the bomb. That's one of the game modes in it. And because it was connected on the internet, the publisher of that game put out a patch. Like as much as we consider like, okay, esports is a popular thing, it's just that one team opposed to hundreds of thousands, of not millions of players around the world that are playing the game as we speak. And they just put out this patch. And so they had to wait for this patch to be installed. So imagine a Windows update. So he said we had to fill in for 40 minutes whilst this patch was downloaded and then had to be installed because we couldn't play the game without the patch being set up.
Bit like a rain delay on cricket or something.
Yeah, pretty much the equivalent. I was like, okay, I guess we're just going to wait for this to happen. So yeah, so that was a very interesting and funny point.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, do you think we've covered it?
I think we have. I guess if anyone wants to find out more info, do send an email to the guys here at My Tech Opinion. They'll probably forward it to me, and I can put in my wording as well. But we also put in links in the show notes, so you can do check out some of the videos and articles written about esports. Be a very interesting stuff, especially in Australia too, that it's an up and coming thing. I should mention that Melbourne eSports event, that was the first one ever this year. That was also sponsored by the Victorian government, and they'll be there for 5 years. Apparently
so it's contract. Okay.
It's sort of like, as much as sort of okay, it's just a thing. No, there's big interest in this stuff, so we're definitely going to see more of it in the future for sure.
All right, so it'll be at the same location, same time for the next 5 years?
Same thing as well.
Cool, excellent. All right. So did you want to have another break and then we'll come back and close the show?
Yeah, we'll go for a quick break.
All right, cool.
Oh, actually, I should go into a break. Sorry, Phil, if you're editing this. We're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be finishing up this episode of My Tech Opinion. And like I said, if you have any questions or feedback or comments, Shayne, what's the website? There's a website or there's a contact?
Yep, the email address is at the bottom of the screen. It is mytechopinion@prosumerit.com. The website is prosumerit.com/MTO for My Tech Opinion. And then if you go to the website, it's all there. It'll be links to the audio stuff, links to the videos, links to the show notes. The website's probably the landing page where you need to go to see everything.
So yeah, do those things if you want to get more info about this topic. And we're finishing up after this break. Hey, welcome back to My Tech Opinion, and that brings us to the end of another show. So, Shayne, I hope you enjoyed my explanation on what best I can explain what esports is, and hopefully you can be interested and check out a few videos, even check out a Twitch stream to see how esports is played. But if it is an esports event in your area, definitely do check it out.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot. The other thing I forgot to mention, actually, and I've mentioned it in an episode before, we just kind of touched on it, and I can't remember where I heard it or saw it, but I believe they're looking at making esports an Olympic event in the next couple of Olympics down the track.
May extend the discussion. There's a podcast or comedian called Joe Rogan who said the only reason Olympics are getting involved is because they want the money.
Yeah.
as much as we didn't mean to, for me, I didn't mean to dirty the industry or the sport. I mean, look, there's advertising in any code, any traditional sport, but it's sort of, I think the Olympics are doing it just so, hey, we want that audience. We want that younger demographic. Yeah, we'll make esports an Olympic thing. Yep. just so we can get the money in the audience. That's it. Shayne, now, what is going to be happening in the next episode of My Tech Opinion? I heard you're going to be doing something about, is it online, offline storage?
No, it'll be backups. So we've done we've done the NAS thing a couple of episodes ago. And this episode was supposed to be the backup episode. But obviously, we got in and we did the eSport thing.
Well, it was a literal backup. I had to fill in for Phil. That was the backup.
Yeah, that's true. So so the next episode we'll cover the backup. So it'll be things like backing up to the cloud, backing up obviously on site first, and then doing another backup to the cloud. What's available, like crash plans.
Probably the options of what cloud options are out there. You got Box and Google Drive and iDrive. Definitely or even more sort of traditional. What are some sort of backup options as well?
Yeah. We'll cover things like your 3-2-1 kind of thing, and your incremental backups, your full backups, that sort of stuff.
That sounds very interesting. I would be interested to hear that too, because I'm looking at better storage options that I have at the moment here, because I've got a 4 gig hard drive, and that's filling up a lot with all my Twitch videos. So it'd be good to see if there was any other options out there. Even Amazon, maybe that could be another consideration too. Anyway, thank you very much for listening or watching this episode of My Tech Opinion. My name is Daniel Olivares, the regular co-host here, Shayne Johnson. Thank you so much for helping me out to lead this show. And if you are big fans of Phil Edwards, he will hopefully be back next episode as well. You can find out more info about the show. You can visit the website at prosumerit.com/MTO. Are we also on the social media side of things too, Shayne?
We are. So as I touched on earlier, everything's on the webpage, but we've got Facebook, we have got YouTube, we have got, we're also on the Aussie Tech Heads radio, so we're part of the go around on that as well. Speaking of them, Aussie Tech Heads web hosting are a sponsor of ours, so we should mention them again. athwebhosting.com.au is where you can find web hosting plans, and they have things like Joomla, Drupal, WordPress, Drupal, cPanel kind of click and drag and drop plans as well. So everything on their webpage, which is, like I said, their link is athwebhosting.com.au.
Awesome stuff. And do check them out. It's good to have a local option of where you can host your website as part of the usual GoDaddy or Bluehost options. You'll probably hear on some podcasts promoting their services. Do yourself a favor and check out Aussie Tech Heads and see if they're a good option for you for your web hosting needs. Anyway, already introduce ourselves, or not introducing ourselves anymore because we're finishing up the show. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you all again next time. So thanks for watching or listening. Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.